Perfect. Hi all. First of all, I gotta say, it's kind of weird to be here because just last year, around at this time, I was writing my bachelor thesis and I was searching for interviewees to talk about network automation. And my supervisor and mentor at that time, Mattis Bramkamp, was like, I know a platform where you can definitely find some people. And I just reached out to the Network Automation Forum and found a couple of people to help me. And that was like my first interaction. But after that, I wanted to go to AutoCon as well, but I never expected to be here just 1 year later and having a speaker role as well. But here we are. Thanks again, Wim, Suhaib, and Ivika for helping me last year with my bachelor thesis. So, first of all, who am I? My name is Emre Cinar. I'm a junior automation sales engineer at Nokia, Nokia Germany to be specific, and I'm part of the NSP automation team. Normally, people at this time talk about how long they've been in the industry. I'm in the industry for 8, not years, months now. And and basically, I'm currently just trying to navigate the space, get to know everything, and yeah. So a couple months ago, my boss came up to me and was like, could you please prepare a service provisioning use case for with a couple tools that a customer is working with? My first reaction was like, okay, what do I need to cover for that? What do I need to know for that? And I talked to a couple of colleagues about it, and there was like one question that they always kind of started to ask themselves when I asked them what to learn first, which was, if you could start over, what would be the first thing you'd learn? Or generally, what would you tell your younger self from, I don't know, how many years ago? I know many people would probably tell his younger self to buy Bitcoin right now, but let's focus on network automation for now. So for me, I was able to kind of sum it up in 3 different pillars, which are network infrastructure knowledge, cloud native technology, and software engineering. So what could you learn? Network infrastructure knowledge, so basically all regarding hardware fundamentals, operational systems, CLI, our network architecture and protocols, and don't even get me started on all the abbreviations. I remember I finished my first Nokia IGP certificate, and I was like, I finally know what you guys mean when you're talking about LSP, link state packet. And they were like, no, Emre, no, you're totally on the wrong track with that. And so on. The next point is cloud native technology. It's basically everywhere by now, let it be containerization, Kubernetes, and the CI/CD methodology. Like people keep talking about it. So it becomes like a must know as well to kind of be able to navigate that space. And last but not least, this is probably the space I'm the most familiar with out of the 3 of them, because in university you usually learn basics of software engineering and so on. So Python and Go seem to be the most popular 2 languages I'm currently seeing, and generally just all the packages, NetMiko, PyTest, and so on. And last but not least, I would say quite important topic for me generally is data formatting, which basically translates to how do I translate everything I get into JSON. So we have the 3 pillars. Technically, there's a new player in the game as well, but I'm not going to mention it just out of simplicity for now, because AI is a topic that everybody's asking for right now, and it would just kind of destroy the simplicity of this talk, so I'm just going to leave it out. But my general observation is that the network automation field is just vast. As a beginner, you have a lot to cover, and loads of requirements that you have to work on. On top of all of this, we still have loads of tooling that we get to know, like, for example, Ansible or Autobot and so on, that is supposed to help us with our network automation journey. And imagine, as a junior, you're just trying to learn about IGP, and just setting up that network takes you 2 days just to learn IGP. and try to configure it on a network. In that moment, the actual deployment of the network through that tool becomes your bottleneck because you spend more time on trying to figure out that tool than actually learning these three pillars. And that's why I come to the general conclusion of consumable tooling is crucial for juniors because it enables us to learn these three pillars faster. The first question that usually comes up is, what is actually consumable tooling? For me, I was able to kind of pin it down to 4 different aspects, which are, first of all, minimal dependencies. I had a situation once in an internship where I had to deploy a monitoring solution in an offline security network. And at that time, I downloaded all the packets manually, put them on another server, and tried to rewrite the YAM repo at that time. I had dependency issues that so I didn't manage to install it at all. It took me like 2 weeks just to install that thing in the beginning. And the only thing I actually wanted to do is actually monitoring. So minimal dependencies. On the other hand, we have documentation. I think this is kind of straightforward. Nobody likes to reverse engineer how a tool works just to get it up and running. Third, I would say real world examples. I kind of like to compare it to school in this case, because I personally enjoyed physics more than maths because you actually knew how to use these equations in the field and in the real world. So it felt more meaningful to me in a way. And I think the same concept applies to tooling as well, as in if you show a junior how to use that tool in the field, he's much more likely to be able to use it as well because he knows what he is using it for. And last but not least, we have the supportive community, which is technically not a part of the tool, but I would say it's still a great element that needs to be considered because it doesn't matter whether you're an expert or a junior, you always need some help. And I don't even know if I would be here if I wouldn't have gotten all the help from my colleagues at work. So thank you for your help and sorry for bothering you. So next off, I was talking about consumable tools. What are tools that made starting out easier for me? So first of all, I think probably all of you have heard of ContainerLab by now. If not, ContainerLab is basically a tool to deploy containerized networks, and especially in the beginning when you're trying to configure your first networks, it's just handy to get them up and running and work on it right away without needing to spend a couple days on setting up VMs or other hardware. And ContainerLab as well was fulfilling the categories I was referring to beforehand through the quick start guide, real world examples, and a Discord server as well. The second tool for me that I found particularly useful was Netbox. Inventory management is sometimes considered as a quite miscellaneous topic to many people because, let's be honest, nobody wants to sit there and write serial numbers down. But as a junior engineer, it's usually a great way to get to know the technology you're working with, even though it can be kind of dry at first, I'm not gonna lie. But after you did that manual work for some time, you actually get to know that you wanna automate that. And Netbox delivers great documentation with that, and I love the Swagger UI, just saying, and that's why it was especially helpful in the beginning, including with the Slack group for help. The tools I talked about beforehand were mostly, or all of them were open source, but imagine on top of the open source tooling, obviously you have the commercial tooling as well. So I just want to include one slide about this, because in my service provisioning use case, it was also a mix of both. So I just want to underline and say, hey, open source is powerful because it fosters collaboration, innovation, but it requires effort for customization. And commercial tools are efficient, help with accountability, but they come at a price. But in the end, it's less about choosing sides, it's about choosing what works. In a recent Packet Pushers episode, they were saying, you build automation on top of business cases and not business cases on top of automation. So in the end, you need to use the tool that fits your business case in that situation. And in the end, we mostly use both, and because reality demands it, and that's where, in my eyes, the balance lives. I kind of like the Romans approach about that, the 3 different categories: do it yourself, do none yourself, and do some yourself. Yeah, that was it. And I'm actually looking forward. Ivana is having a talk about that on Thursday for the Birds of a Feather sessions, if you guys are interested in that. So I was talking about the use case at first, but what was the actual use case about? I want to kind of tell you how I went through it and what kind of tools I used, how they helped me, and what was this whole use case about that I had to fulfill. So basically, here we have the topology I was working with. The whole setup for a customer was a layer 3 VPN service where you had, like, on each PE or provider edge, you had a CE customer edge behind it. And the idea was to create more visibility for each CE in the layer 3 VPN. Because beforehand, it was mostly in Excel that the people were recording manually, and it was just getting tiresome to do that. The first step for that was to set up the network, the test network that I was using afterwards. I did that with ContainerLab out of the box. That was probably the easiest part of all of it. Just set up my test network that you guys can see over there and begun thinking of how I'm going to continue from here. Because the next question that obviously I came up with was, how can I get the data to associate the PE with the according CE? And how can I use that data afterwards? And I kind of broke that up into 2 different steps, together with the tools we were using. So, how to get the data? We talked about the network before. ContainerLab works. And as I'm working at Nokia as well, our customer was using, for the PE devices, was using Nokia NSP to discover the PE nodes via netconf. And the idea was to use Netbox as a data source for all the other devices. Now the question comes up, how should I discover the CE devices in this case? Because they were intended to be managed separately. And my idea was to use the new Netbox discovery to populate CE devices. And on the other hand, to get that data from Netbox, from NSP to Netbox, I use the Python script with the diode SDK as well to query the NSP API, and then that data gets forwarded to the Netbox diode ingestion service where the changes are forwarded to Netbox. So that's all for, like, the technical setup. But I talked about Netbox before. On the other side, I talked about ContainerLab before. On the other side, I had Netbox. And the whole Netbox setup was really great to set up. There's a quick start guide, got it up and running in 5 minutes. So, and great documentation, so I was able to look into that. And on the other hand, I was able to use a Python script to just query NSP's northbound interface via the API with NSP documentation. So, now we got the data, and what do we do next? The next step was basically doing the other way around, to use NSP to deploy the data I actually gathered beforehand to the network. I was just using the Netbox API for that, and it's well documented. I think I said this before, the Swagger UI was great. And I was using that data to provision the service afterwards. For that, I just had to write a workflow. NSP's workflow manager is based on OpenStack Mistral, so there was loads of open source and Nokia documentation for that. And I just had to do a Yang model adaptation to save the data as well after querying it. This use case was kind of an example for me that combined the 3 pillars I was talking about before. So first, I had the network infrastructure knowledge that I used through Container Lab, where I had to configure the network as well. So I had to be able to understand what I'm actually doing, like what is a layer 3 VPN service. On the other hand, I had the containerization through Container Lab as well. What is a Docker image? What is a Docker network? And third, I had to do had to write Python code to actually query an API. What kind of lessons, challenges, and outlook did I learn out of this use case and out of the last 8 months I was working on? So the first one is basically striving for perfection can keep you from achieving results. I had multiple situations where I could have just solved something differently, but I was so focused on fixing that error that I spent like an hour trying to save that, trying to correct that, but I didn't manage to. But I could have saved that hour and just solved it differently. And the second point is thorough preparation and research is key. I was talking about the Netbox diode quick start guide before. I just found out about that after trying for half a day to do that myself. And after spending half a day and trying to do it myself, I found the quick start guide and it worked in 5 minutes. So I could have just used that instead, and if I would have done proper research before that. What kind of challenges? The first one is, I would say, maintainability. I would say it's a general thing. Like scripting is something you learn in university as well, but it's difficult to write actually or create stuff that is actually maintainable afterwards. What kind of guidelines do you need to follow for that? And how can I create this that it is manageable and maintainable for the team I'm working with afterwards? And second is lasting impact. Stein was recently saying in the Packet Pushers episode that you should just let the students do it. Let just the students do it, and we will do it, we will work on it, but we want to do something meaningful and do something that is not just shelved afterwards. It's like the idea here. And the outlook, this was like a basic demo, and the idea would be to improve this setup from a demo to a realistic testbed. So I was trying to get you all to understand my position, but now I want to get your opinion on all of it. So if you could help somebody starting out right now, what would be the first thing you would recommend?
You just got a question from the speaker. Start with Linux and Git.
Linux and Git, okay. Okay, I talked to a couple, okay, there's one, okay. AutoCon workshops, that's a good one, yeah.
Excellent answer, excellent answer.
I would say consider provisioning tools as services and not requiring the junior engineers to actually set them up. Maybe have a server where you have these things, maybe you already have Container Labs already set up and running on there. And so that the junior engineer can just go in there and start making use of it without having to do all the configuration and stand up and installation.
Okay, thank you. So, yeah, my conclusion based on a couple talks I had with people as well was that there's no, I would say, right way to learn all of this. My approach is to currently learn the basics of all 3 of them, and then based on what my use case is, I'm going to deep dive more into each of the questions or each of the topics I need for my daily work. Yeah, that's it. Questions?
No, yeah, thanks for sharing your thoughts and great stuff. My question is basically, what can we do better as a community to help people like yourself come into our domain, and what can we do better basically to help people like yourself, or get more people like yourself coming to us, and enable them to do the things that you just shared?
I would say one point that I see quite a lot is that some people, when they are in like a group and the people are talking about something, sometimes there's always the perception that everybody knows this, and the one person who doesn't know it is afraid to ask people to actually know what because he doesn't know what they're actually talking about. So sometimes when people, I like when people include or ask you to just confirm whether you know about this topic or not, even though the person might know about it. So I want to lower a bit the, what do you call it, the level, or I want people to easier engage in the community, because there is a lot of, I would say, assumptions. I had a lot of talks where people suddenly went on and on with all kinds of abbreviations. And I'm like, yeah, we are doing MCP over here, we're doing that, And I feel like afraid to ask, because I don't want to get into a situation where people are like question and so on. Thank you.
Hi, Bart Norland.
Yeah.
Thank you for doing this talk, right? It gives us, who are longer in the industry, a lot of insight into what's going on from your perspective. So looking back for the 8 months that you're now working in this community and in this field, right? What were the magic things that you have got as guidance that you think like, yes, these are or were excellent for me? Just returning the question.
Well, like I think the quick sentence would be, you get the, what should I call it, like the click moment at some point. Even though you may seem lost at the beginning and the people are talking about loads of different stuff, which is above your knowledge base, at some point you're going to get to the situation where it just makes sense. It just a click and it makes sense. That would be my resume after, or my conclusion after 8 months. For a couple things, I guess. I still have a lot to learn. Perfect. Any other questions? Okay.
Nope, hang on.
One more?
Too easy. Last question.
Do you have any suggestions on how to make network engineering as a career more attractive to young people in computer science and technical degrees?
I would say, like, I see not really a lot of university degrees or university courses when it comes to network automation. For example, at my university, we just did like basic, what is a router, what is a computer, and that's so on. So I would say we need a bit more engagement and just visibility in that area, because for most of the people I study together with, the network is just something that is there, and we don't really care how it works as long as it works. And that visibility is just, I would say, not there for now. There's a couple nice initiatives with the universities. So for example, ORS is working in Switzerland trying to offer it to students as well. But I would say we're missing that. Okay, perfect.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Very nice. Thank you.